This is what we call B3. We fenced it in, or we closed that part of the fence that was open the moment this began to grow with the early rain. So it has been undisturbed since then. And the idea is to build a reserve here, so we let it grow, so that later on, when there's a challenge with getting enough forage, sheep and horses can then forage on what is growing here. So we let it grow large, and it will have a longer period of not being touched. We have not yet grazed in here. This is supposed to happen during the week now, because it needs some supervision, so that the cows will not destroy the now dormant palovnia trees, so that they don't scratch on them or something else happens. So the idea is to be in there with them and guide them away from a tree if something like that were to happen. Before the rain we did graze the lower part. I am going down there and have a look. And on the neighbor's land also positive things happen. Of course, down here, which is directly below our wannabe food forest, things are looking a lot better than elsewhere, because this constantly gets water from above. So you see our trees sticking out there above the stone wall, and this is a lot wetter than the rest of this terrain. So you can see the difference if you look behind those stones here. There it is drier. But of course now, with all that rain, a lot of positive things happen. So let's see how we look here in the lower part. So this is how it looks like. It's coming up again. You can still see where the grasses got bitten. They are of a lighter green color, but it is definitely growing now with the sunshine. And I expect in 2 weeks this to be grazable again. Of course, this would be at a very low end, but could be done. But we won't. The idea is to let it grow at least 30 days. This is the creek where a lot of water used to run away, and now it isn't, because there ahead is our big pond that we dug, and now we only have a little bit of standing water, and it goes here to the other side, and that creek continues there, doesn't make a left, and then continues further down and will eventually meet a river. Here in the animal lane, a lot of mushrooms have shown up. You can see them sparkling in the sun. I am definitely not an expert on mushrooms, and I can't tell whether this is edible or not. But I know that Juan has collected a few. They looked similar to this one, and they roasted them in the cortijo over the open fire there, as part of their bocadillo, which is some sort of a breakfast at 10 o'clock. That's a very important thing, because the guys come here with just a coffee and a toast. It's not very substantial, and at 10 o'clock they need to eat, and that is basically then their breakfast. So that is the thing, that people here in Andalusia have a completely different lifestyle. And it shows in every aspect. So if you live in a more northern place, you are used to a substantial breakfast. And that is not what people around here do. The big meal is what elsewhere would be the afternoon. And then there is siesta. Different culture, different way of living. Nothing to criticize, but it's important to know. They are everywhere. That must be all the droppings from the animals. I would guess there is a connection between the two things, because I see the mushrooms here and I don't see them over there. So, and if you look here, it might be coincidence, but where the horse manure is, we have a lot more of them. So I think all this animal activity is helping all this land to come back to life. Now I can only tell you about this, but here the horses once in a while take a bath. They take advantage of this accumulated water and just drop themselves into it. Now this is what flows out of our pond. Then the creek continues crossing over here into the neighbor's land. Once again, a lot of horse manure, and right there we have these guys. So I think that's not a coincidence, because you can follow that and there are more. So now that I'm here on the other side, I can show you how this slope looks like. So the vetiver is holding all this material in place to stabilize the platform, and it got cut down aggressively because the roots is what makes the job and not the leaves, and the leaves are now in B2 as mulch. That is the technique that we decided to use in this case. Allow me to introduce you to our shop. It is located at our website caimito.eu. One of the products is the world famous Iberian ham. After preparation in the butcher shop, it is kept in a huge amount of salt for a while and then hung from the ceiling in climate-controlled ripening chambers for 3 to 5 years, depending on the size of the ham. People either buy a whole leg, which is between 6 and 10 kilos, or hand-cut slices that are vacuum sealed in 100-gram pouches. As you can see in many of our videos, our pigs fatten themselves on acorns running around the land. The acorns give the ham a very nutty flavor, and after you took a bite, that flavor stays in the mouth for a while, just like with a good wine. And given the fact that we planted here several times Paulownias, we will not repeat this at the moment, because we learned that those are the survivors, and if we were to plant more in the lower part, we might also lose them. So let's use it this way, and maybe later work with some chicken tractor in here, and at a later stage then come back to this idea, or establish closer to the creek there a different type of tree. There are many ideas, but as I keep telling you guys, the list is very long, and sometimes you miss the opportunity. It's either because of lack of resources or something else is more pressing at the moment. But it doesn't really matter. This is an ongoing journey, and as long as we do something that moves us forward, all is well. And sometimes you have to take care of the broad strokes first and then come back to the details. If we were just about creating an orchard, of course, then we would be planting tree all day long. But there are so many things. And if you go to our website, kaimito.eu, I think in the front page you can now have a much better overview what this is all about, and also the many sectors that we need to put work in. I want to go back there to have a look at the more remote part of our zone B. It's not really remote, but there is not much going on there, except that the sheep and the horses roam there. In the future, like I kept mentioning, or like I mentioned, this will be a pig maternity area, and here and there we do something to get us going in that direction, but we cannot really use it for that and breed our own pigs because we don't have the permit for it. And we get the permit once we have built a structure where we can put pigs into quarantine if the order comes. And that is something we might want to build here, because there's a connection to this animal lane. That is why this pile of dirt is there. We need to level this area here, so raise it a little bit, and then build a structure there. That structure at the moment is thought to be a combination of a roofed car park, so that we have a space where we can put the vehicles out of the weather, the sun and the rain, and at the same time, when it is necessary, we can convert it by adding some panels that will form the walls into a quarantine shelter. Of course, this again is an investment, and we do not depend on breeding our own pigs at the moment, so it doesn't really matter, but at some point we will then do that. So here we have a work in progress, and we do have the fencing material in order to put up the physical fence at on these fence posts here, because you can see they are in a straight line, and of course they moved a little bit because of the soil is now bland, but once the fence is installed that looks better. But this is only that one sector here, but we have the material, we can definitely continue here, but it will not buy us a lot, because for this to be functional we also need to fence more pieces, but at least some of the fence posts, the thicker ones, they are already set all around, so we need to buy a little bit more material, and then we can fence this in. And the plan is to have some sectors and control their grazing by having these sectors, and later this area will then be turned into the breeding ground for pigs. And what I can mention also is here it goes very well, despite the fact that they are munching on it, because there's a lot of animal buried here in the ground. And you might remember that we buried also the fat from the pigs, because we did not know what to do with that. And even if you know that you can make soap out of the fat, you need to have a little bit of installation for doing that. So some sort of a commercial kitchen would be helpful. And if you don't have it yet, well, then there is no other choice than to bury it. But all these things eventually we will construct and have and make in some way, but we have started with empty ground. So there wasn't a farm here. This is an area where people do ranching and live in a village, and we try to do a slightly different thing. Here at the very back of our zone B there is also a pond, and it came to be by damming the outflow there. It used to flow underneath the fence, and I dug a little bit a hole and put the material there to the left, and it is fed by the rain or the overflow from that pond there on the neighbor side. So that wall you see there, let me zoom in a little bit. That is the wall of the pond. That pond provides drinking water to the animals that used to be there on the neighbor's land. And there's also this part here. Our activity further up on our own piece kind of cut off the supply because we modified things, and now there's not much leakage from over there. But this is a nice thing, and there are some ideas what we might be doing here, but it's an issue because, for example, if we put in ducks here, they need protection, and that can be hard to do. We lost all our chickens and the rooster to foxes and aerial predators. So this is definitely a thing. So it's not, oh, you have a pond and put some animals there. We would be providing a meal and not get any benefit. And we need to figure out, when there is time for such a detail, how to do this. That is the challenge. It's not the same thing as a garden, where you can do a few things a lot easier, so I think. But in any case, this whole area is supposed to become a fenced-in area, so that the grasses and whatever we might put here can then grow. Because there where the fence post is, the things to the right, that is this area that I envision to use for the sows and the piglets. So I want to have maybe 30 small areas that are interconnected with an animal lane, and then open and close a gate, and in each area there is some forage, and then there is a rotation. So we move the sows and the piglets through all this, and when the piglets are big enough, then they participate in the rotation outside in our zones A, C and D. But I need to be patient. There is no magic wand. Someone did mention shiitake mushroom. It can grow on logs. Well, this is not shiitake, but it's a mushroom, some sort of fungi, and there you have it. So I find this rather nice. And despite the fact that we have several animals grazing here all the time, which is kind of wrong, you can see that it does grow here. So this area definitely has more fertility than it used to have. Of course, if we were using a rotation here, I'm pretty sure that this would even be more impressive. This is just a tiny, small and rather personal bit here. I finally got around to put the chive in here. That chive is now 2 years old. It has survived in a planting pot, and it's greening up, and now it has a lot more space for the leaves. And in the remaining part I put in some seed, but they will not germinate with those temperatures. It will then come back in spring. This is more chive and also coriander, and those are things that we love for our food. And you see, this is that box that we had in another place, and now it is here filled up, because here in the back we have a water line, and you see this pipe there. We can use that to install an irrigation system, and on the sides of this we want to install some posts to hold up a shade net for summer, so that these plants will not suffer too much, and we can have some green stuff like a salad and so during summer, which is not common in this area because of the climate. Nobody has salad around here, but we love it, and therefore this is an attempt to have a little bit of a garden. But like I said, it's a personal thing. It has nothing to do with the overall effort, but it's important. This is the hole in the future dog enclosure. This is all from the rain, so there's still a lot more capacity. And the other impressive thing is, just because the horses and sheep have been here a few times and nobody is grazing, that is the grass that is growing in here. If that were a paddock, it would be just great. And over there in the background you can see poor Sakahawea, the blind mare. And I'm thinking hard, what can we do? Because it's not so good to keep a horse confined like this all the time. Here and there she gets taken out for a walk, but that's likely not enough. And it's also a pity she cannot really take advantage of all that forage that is now coming up. We need to feed her in there. So a different solution would be a lot better. There's this idea to make something like these chicken tractors for small ruminants and use that to move her around. But yeah, it's difficult. A blind horse is a challenge.